This week's Retail Week is brought to you by Avail, Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Never stop pushing. Hello again, welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. Paul Schrimpf here with Eric Sfiligoj. And an interesting week for me. I was at CropLife America and I got back in the office at 9 this morning after taking a red eye. So I'm liable to say just about anything. Eric, hopefully you want to take advantage of that, but we'll see what I can do. So just a quick summary of the meeting. It wasn't, what that was interesting, it wasn't a lot of new news. There was a lot of the things we've been talking about all along, concerned about the consolidation. I think consolidation seems to be from the perspective of the basics, and everyone else seems to be that things are moving at pace, and that there really aren't any major snafus to be looking toward. I don't think anyone was in a particularly concerned mood or anything along those lines from that standpoint. I think the concern continues to be with retailers and trying to learn who their partners are and who's going to be their rep and what the programs are going to look like. There's still a lot of mystery about that. There's still a lot of concern, and there's also I think from the standpoint of looking at the post-patent manufacturers at all levels versus the basics, I think there's the sense that they see an opportunity to try and get some market share, and with the basics not in chaos but certainly in flux over the next probably 6 to 18 months, if not longer, an opportunity for them to try and gain some market share and court retail and distribution, which from the post-patent companies we talk to is certainly on their radar, is the U.S. market and the opportunities that exist here. So those were some of the highlights of it. Of course, we found out Jay Vroom of CropLife America, our good friend and the longtime head of CropLife America, will be retiring, and there'll be a search coming up pretty soon for that. And I think we had a sense that Jay was probably on the way to retiring based on the way he composed a great staff of people there, and he's got the organization running very, very well, and trying to get it ready for when he ultimately departs. But I think he's leaving it in really good shape, and they're going to have a very difficult time finding somebody to replace him. But I know they're going to be doing their best to do that. And we also learned that Charlie Fisher, who was formerly head of Dow, passed away recently. I think it was earlier this week, and a lot of condolences to his family. And he was a terrific guy. He was a great source for us of information, always very open. Did a great job with Dow, and so he leaves us, and we're very sorry to hear that. But there was a lot of tributes at CropLife America and discussion about that as well. So and of course the Dicamba issue is never far from the consciousness. I think the consensus is that there's going to be a lot of, as we've been saying in the video, a lot of looking at all the factors going into this year, and going through the year, and then trying to determine what course of action, if any, needs to be taken for next year, including everybody, the consultants, and hopefully the extension, and some of the folks that have been somewhat left out of some equations. So I guess you have something on the Dicamba front as well, sir.
Yeah, as we've mentioned, the state of Arkansas has put in its recommendations that Dicamba not be used in 2018 past April 15th, and I know that the folks at Monsanto think that is a misguided approach, that's not the correct way to deal with the Dicamba situation in the state of Arkansas. We found out this week, Paul, that a bunch of farmers have got together and they've put out their own recommendations to the Arkansas Plant Board regarding Dicamba use. Their recommendations include not applying it after May 25th, excuse me, so a month and a half later than the April 15th date the board's recommending. And they're also saying that they wouldn't do application if the temperature was 88 degrees or higher. And the final thing is that they're suggesting a larger buffer zone, going from 110 feet out to 5,280 feet. And for those of you who might know your conversion tables, that's a 1 mile buffer zone that's being recommended by the Arkansas farmers. So Paul, the plant board hasn't said whether or not they'll take these recommendations under advisement or they'll just stick with their original recommendations of no application after April 15th. But we'll have to watch the situation accordingly.
Interesting. Start hitting the high and the low, and maybe something will happen in the middle, or maybe we'll find something out that changes their opinion on that. Who knows? Well, we'll get to a couple more items after the break.
We want our farmers to be successful, and if they're spending money to put on phosphate in particular, we like to put a veil with it so that a lot more of that gets into the plant. We know that a majority of it gets tied up in the soil before a plant has a chance to work with it. So we like to put a veil to increase that availability to the crop.
Also, CropLife America, we visited with a number of crop protection companies, including Syngenta, and I know there was some news recently in Syngenta.
Yes, Paul. Actually, Syngenta was involved with a lawsuit regarding the release of its AgriSure corn trait a few years ago, with growers claiming that they had lost sales because of that corn appearing in the marketplace, and places like China were then rejecting corn shipments down the line. We found out this week that Syngenta and the farmers have settled this lawsuit. Details will be forthcoming once everybody has all the T's crossed and I's dotted. But it sounds like this litigation, at least, Paul, will be going away from Syngenta's plate.
Well, that's terrific.
Yeah, and one other thing to mention, I know next week I will be visiting with the folks at Sfiligoj Curly. They're opening a new plant in East Dubuque, Illinois, just across the border from Iowa. And I'll have hopefully some video from that visit here in a couple of weeks.
And then the week after that's the Vision Conference, and we'll be emptying half of our office to go and attend that thing. We've had a really interesting mix of attendees sign up, a lot of interest from really standard basic manufacturers and from the fertilizer companies. You know, your core ag industry companies are coming out in big numbers to find out what's going on with technology, and so that's terrific. It's a different mix than last year, where we saw a lot more technology from outside the industry coming in, and I think with kind of the change and shift in investment, I think now the core ag companies want to know what's going on and what they should be doing. So that should be. There's still time to sign up. PrecisionAgVision.com if you're interested. Oh, how's CropLife 100 coming?
Oh, very good. I got about a half of a minute at this point, Paul. Some of the highlights. It looks like the marketplace will be up slightly, not significantly, but slightly. And one other thing I find real interesting is we have an open-ended question in the survey regarding people are still saying one of their key bugaboo points is finding and retaining good employees. But this year I'm noticing that most companies actually have more employees listed than they did a year ago. You know, if a company had 310 employees a year ago, they're up to about 325 for 2017. So people at ag retail may have trouble finding people, but they found enough to up their staffs a little bit this year. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, Paul. I'll have to do a little digging to see.
Interesting. People are crying for those results, and I was hoping we'd get some preliminaries here pretty soon. So that's interesting news. If you haven't sent it in, send that in, because we're going to be wrapping up in the next 2 weeks, I guess. Yes.
Thereabout, yes.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for joining us this edition of CropLife Retail Week, and we will see you next week. Thank you to this week's video sponsor, Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer from Verdesian Life Sciences.